Hey, action figure fans. This is Scott ToyGuru Neitlich. Hey, actually, that is me on screen. I rarely put myself on screen. And a big part of that is because during the Matty days, I was kind of always the guy on screen. And that was never really intentional. It just kind of happened organically because, well, I guess someone had to talk to the fans. And as a fan myself, I was always happy to. But MattyCollector was not done by one person, not by a long shot. There was a fantastic team of people behind it. And I want to point out today some of the other great folks who worked on MattyCollector because they deserve so much more of the credit than I do. And I'm not talking, I mean, the Four Horsemen are amazing, but this isn't a video about the Four Horsemen. This is a video about the Mattel folks. Obviously, we could not have built this without the Four Horsemen. They were amazing. But, yeah, I mean, you'll never find sculptors like them, ever. But I want to talk specifically about the different teams at Mattel who worked together to create MattyCollector. And while marketing tended to oversee one brand, other groups like engineering and design and packaging tended to have many brands assigned to them. So having MattyCollector wasn't sort of out of the blue for another team to work on. All right, so the first person I should actually introduce wasn't someone who was on a specific auxiliary team, but actually was someone there to help me out in marketing, and that was Robin right here. Robin was kind of a jack of all trades, my girl Friday kind of, I guess, assistant, for lack of a better word, who just really helped with everything that had to get done on MattyCollector on the day-to-day operations, I guess, more or less. She did everything from sending out samples to fan sites so they could do reviews and hopefully get PR for the line, to helping me round up all of the ostriches that ran around the office and put them back in their cages. All right, from a design standpoint, the first person we had on the team when we launched with King Grayskull was Martin. Martin Areola. So, I don't know why his LinkedIn page is backwards like that. Threw me off for a second. So, and I don't have images of everyone, which is why I'm using a lot of LinkedIn pages. So, but I did find a picture of Martin because you can find one by Googling him. So, Martin was actually, for lack of a better word, an old-timer at Mattel. He had been around working on He-Man since the vintage era. And he was now the design manager who was going to oversee the King Grayskull project, which at that point we didn't know it was a whole line. It was just going to be one Comic-Con item. Now, he worked on the original figures, including Battle Armor He-Man, that he was the one who adapted the Hot Wheels Crash-Ups device or feature for He-Man and Skeletor to make the infamous Battle Armor He-Man and Skeletor. He also worked extensively on the New Adventures line, including the infamous Darius figure that never made it to market. In fact, when he learned I was such a huge Masters of the Universe fan, he actually went home and went through boxes of his old stuff and found the original Darius mold and brought it in to show me, or like the prototype, and explained how the reason it never went to market is because I could not get the mechanism to work with his swinging arm and the mace. But it was really cool to see that piece of history. So directly reporting to Martin was Terry. Terry was the first designer assigned to Masters of the Universe Classics, and he had other lines too. He worked primarily on Max Steel, but MattyCollector was kind of a secondary line. So I couldn't find too many images of Terry online, but luckily going through the various Matty conventions, I was able to get a shot. He's right there. So that's Terry. So Terry worked on about the first year and a half of the line, starting with King Grayskull, before design was passed off to Bill Beneke. And a lot of you may know Bill Beneke, who was also the lead designer on DCU Classics. He shows up actually in quite a few of my DCU Classics videos, and he and I became very good friends over the years, especially because we would drive up and down to Burbank all the time for Warner Brothers approval meetings. And Bill's a great guy who's still at Mattel. Not that Terry isn't. Terry's a great guy too. I just didn't spend as much time in the car with Terry. Now, at this point, the design lead for Motu Classics kind of bounced around a lot. Because, again, Matty wasn't really a full-time assignment, so it was sort of like whoever could be found to kind of work on it. So after Bill, it actually went back to Terry for a while, and which was great because Terry had experience on the brand and had already done the first sort of year and a half-ish figures. I think King Hiss was the figure where they swapped, where that was Bill's last figure and Terry's first. After that, then we had another swap where Ruben Martinez took over, who actually worked extensively on the 2000X line. Although the figures that are credited to Ruben were actually done by Mario, who reported to Ruben. So every figure that kind of Ruben publicly talked about was actually worked on by Mario, who was at that time a junior designer reporting to Ruben. Ruben had been promoted and now had people under him. After Ruben/Mario's time, the design duties were then handed off again to Brandon. As I said, it was sort of like whoever had spare time in their schedule was asked to help out on Matty, because it wasn't a big enough brand to get a full-time team. All right, and I should also, there's Brandon there at Comic-Con. So yeah, there's not too many images of him online. Brandon's a great guy too. He oversaw a huge amount of the line. Okay, switching from design to engineering, our first engineer was T.C. Chen. He worked on about the first 2 years, starting with King Grayskull. I'd also worked with T.C. on all of the DCU classics and the DC theatrical lines, including JLU, Justice League Unlimited. T.C. was also a longtime vet of Mattel. And an engineer's job, for clarification, is they're the one who gets to choose the wacky colors that prototypes... No, just kidding. These are just based on whatever color is in the machine at the time when the prototype is made. But they're the ones who actually deal with the functionality of the figure. They have to help translate the Four Horsemen's sculpt into an actual articulated figure. Well, I guess that's kind of what design does, and then engineering is the one that makes sure design's work actually works. Meaning what's supposed to articulate articulates, and then what's supposed to be snap into a hand snaps into a hand, and the materials that are supposed to be made of ASB plastic or PVC are made of the right plastic. Now, as I mentioned, TC is a longtime vet of Mattel. He worked on the New Adventures line back in the day, and when we were doing Icarius Flipshot, he said, "Oh my gosh, I remember I worked on Flipshot back in the day. That's crazy. Now I'm working on Flipshot again. I just never thought that would happen." And we all thought that was really, really cool. He even found a picture of him with Flipshot from back in the day that he brought in. And so, kind of to thank TC for all his work on the line, we gave his initials to Icarius as in the bio. So that's why his real name is TC Icarius Kaz. After TC left the brand for other brands, he's still at Mattel, we had Brittany come in as the engineer, and she lasted, I think, well, she was there longer than TC. She was there for like 5 years of the brand or something like that, doing an immense amount of figures. I think she did more figures from a design engineering standpoint than anyone else, since the designers tended to rotate every year, but the engineers only switched once between TC and Brittany. So she's responsible for making sure so many of your figures actually articulate and work the way they're supposed to. So you can definitely thank her for that. She was awesome to work with, as was TC. I miss all these people. These were all great people. All right, so that's engineering. The next group to talk about is packaging. Packaging for Motu Classics starts with Frank Varela. So Frank was with Mattel for a while before I got there. But we became good friends because we both had kind of that passion for collecting besides just working on toys. Since a lot of people were there, to produce product, but Frank was also a collector, as was Bill Beneke and myself. And, I think that definitely comes across in our work because we really sort of bring that passion. Now, a note about Frank is he also designed the art for the VHS releases of Star Wars in 1995. If anyone had these or recalls the half-mask VHS tapes, that was Frank's work before he came to Mattel. And when he did come to Mattel, one of the first brands he worked on was the DC Superheroes, which was the line that predated DC Universe Classics, when Mattel just had rights to the Batman and Superman family of characters. So he did all the design work on those packaging, as well as other Batman brands. This one in particular, the Shadow Tech for the Batman, you'll notice that the package is actually designed to look like a bat hanging upside down, like when they're hanging on shelf. I always thought this was genius, and I wondered if people actually noticed that, but he told me that was his intention. All right, but when it comes to Motu Classics, the direction for management was to just put them in a white box, because these were going online. They weren't going to be at retail, so there was no reason to put any energy into packaging other than just making sure it's shipped in one piece. So ship it in a white box. But I was definitely on the case that this was not the right way to do it for collectors, and we needed to come up with a better way to present them, especially for collectors who kept them in the box. Now, Frank had designed the deluxe packaging for Comic-Con for the King Grayskull figure. He designed this from the ground up. He did the brickwork, he did the pop-out top, he did the lights and sounds. He loved working on Comic-Con items. He also did Solomon Grundy and, if you want to say, the Wonder Twins. He was really big in finding ways to incorporate lights and sound into the package. So, yeah, he did the whole shebang with all the pop-out turrets and the jawbridge that opens up. And we're very, very lucky he did this, because since he put so much work into this, we had the graphic file for the green brick. And since management just wanted us to put these in white boxes, because we had Frank's green bricks, we were able to create the iconic package that you all now love and remember. So that's how we were able to come up with a package with very little budget. By slapping on a bio and a cross-sell on the back to use up the real estate. And there we go. There was our package that could be designed for very little money. After Frank did King Grayskull, the bulk of the actual individual figures was handled by Joyce. So Joyce was also in the packaging group, and she basically took over for Frank. And a big thing I would do with Joyce is we'd work on the pack out. So I would get the figure and arrange it in exactly the pose we wanted, which was usually an homage to the vintage figures. She would photograph it and then work with Hong Kong to make sure the blister pack out was exactly in that pose. She was also a key contributor to working on things like the Motu Classics maps, helping to coordinate the art with outside vendors. Like in the case, this and the Castle Grayskull box were both done by Rudy, who did the original Castle Grayskull box. So Joyce was kind of the intermediator between Mattel and Rudy, handling any outside art vendors that were needed for the brand on the rare occasion when we actually had budget to afford them. All right, switching from toy product then to digital, we also had a great, fantastic team working on the digital side, and that was headed by Lou, who was a producer on Mattel's website division, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. And he handled almost all of a lot of Mattel websites, Barbie Collector, Hot Wheels Collector, and he was great. I really treasure my friendship with him. We would have weekly meetings to basically go over the layout of the website, and he would do all the the layout and the hypertext markup language, and et cetera, making sure the website looked great and everything actually functioned. He would also do things like update some of the graphics, like the meters for the subscriptions. So he was the one who was updating it every day or every week whenever we would get sales that justified a new graphic. And then we also had Eve, who was a vendor for Mattel. She didn't work for Mattel. She was an outside vendor. She ran a company called Golden Summit and basically handled all of the creative for the website. Things like marketing, not like the print ads for Toy Fair magazine. That was something I did. But she would handle like the branding for MattyCollector, and she would write all of the sales copy and the legal copy and make sure it all worked with Lou's layouts, and they worked together to make sure all of this worked and looked pretty and could actually help sell the product, because every product, whether it was a subscription or a basic figure, needed description copy and explanations of what you were getting. The subscriptions were a little complicated. And then she would also do all of the copy for, I guess what you could call digital ads, banner ads, that type of stuff. And then Lou would do the layouts based on her copy, and they would work together on that, as well as things like the club logos and, all of that kind of branding. So things like the pre-sales, again, she would handle all the copy. She would handle the headlines. Basically everything you're looking at here was the work of her and Lou. And then finally, the last kind of partner was Digital River, which I know there were definitely ups and downs with shipping. And we get all the time people asking, well, why was Digital River brought on as the shipping partner? And it's actually a pretty simple answer. The reason is that 30% of MattyCollector's sales were international, and that was something Digital River did very well. They were an expert at that. And finding a new partner at any point was just going to be starting over from day one, and it wasn't something we could do. Now, we had other people that worked with us over the years from the entertainment industry, who also were big Masters of the Universe fans, helping us make specific product, such as the Robot Chicken crew here. But then there were a few other folks I should also call out. This is Rob David, who's still at Mattel. I think he's now a VP at Mattel, overseeing entertainment. While I was there, his main task was working on the He-Man iPad or iPhone app game, which sort of became the inspiration behind the Motu Minis, which are now available at Walmart. Hey, there's a free plug for you, Mattel. So I worked with him a little bit on this, and you'll notice, things like the Orb of Power from the Classics line shows up in the game, things like that. But yeah, his job is basically to find new ways to promote the brand. All right, wrapping it up. So after I left, Mark Morse here, who was director over all of Boys, not just MattyCollector, he directed the entire Boys division, the reins kind of fell in his hands, and he was the one who coordinated the move to Super 7. And then Kim here took over for Robin, who I mentioned in the very beginning, except that Kim wasn't actually an employee of Mattel, she was a temp who came in to help once Robin got reassigned to Barbie, I believe. Whew. It takes a village. It really does. It takes an Eternian village. I want to thank all of those people for helping to make Matty great. We could not have done it without them. They are all amazing, talented people. And if you like this video, be sure to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. That's the way to tell YouTube that it's popular, and YouTube should suggest it to other people. So it's a great way to help spread the word about these videos and all the toy information the Spectre Creative channel has. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.